At 11:15 on the morning of August 31st, 1944, Private James Rukard stood beside his 2.5-ton GMC truck at a fuel depot sitting 50 miles east of Paris, watching Lieutenant General George Patton's Third Army grind to a dead halt. He was only 19 years old. He had been on French soil for 8 weeks. Serving as a truck driver with the 514th Quartermaster Regiment, he now found himself staring at a scene that should have been downright impossible. The most aggressive, fastest-moving American army ever assembled had just run completely out of fuel. For 30 days, Patton's Third Army had slashed across the map with breathtaking speed. They had torn free from Normandy. They had liberated Paris. They had chased German forces all the way across France, and now they were sitting just 30 miles from the German border, ready to drive straight into the heart of the Third Reich. The German army was broken, scattered, desperate. One more violent push, and the war might have ended by Christmas. But Patton's tanks were dry. His trucks were dry. His entire army, spread across northeastern France, had drained every last drop of fuel in the entire American supply system. For that day alone, Third Army had requested 400,000 gallons of gasoline. They received 31,000. Without fuel, the most powerful mechanized force in the world was nothing more than silent, gleaming metal scattered across French fields. And the Germans were not waiting a second. Patton knew it. His commanders knew it. Every hour the Third Army stood frozen gave the enemy precious time. Time to regroup, time to dig defenses, time to turn a collapsing retreat into a brutal fight. The question looming over everyone was not if the Germans would recover. It was whether the Americans could start moving again before that recovery became reality. Rukard didn't understand the high-level strategy. He didn't need to. His job was simple. He drove a truck. The Army had trained him for 6 weeks, handed him the keys to a GMC Jimmy, and ordered him to haul supplies from the Normandy beaches to wherever the front line demanded. But on August 31st, 1944, there was nothing left to haul. The depots were empty. The ships still unloading at the beaches were 200 miles away. Railroads lay in ruins. So the only method of moving supplies was the truck convoy system. Yet there were not enough trucks, not enough drivers, and not enough hours in the day to sustain an army of 250,000 men moving at Patton's breakneck pace. The larger crisis was simple. No one had planned for this. American strategy called for a slow, measured advance across France. Build supply depots, repair railways, secure ports, move forward in controlled phases. Patton ignored every bit of it. He smashed out of Normandy on August 1st, and then he simply never stopped. 80 miles a day, sometimes 100. If the Germans couldn't stop him, he refused to stop himself. By late August, the Third Army was sitting 350 miles from the nearest functioning port. Logistics officers were shouting that the advance had to pause. Patton told them to find a way. What few truly grasped was that the United States had built a war machine fueled completely by oil. Everything rolled on gasoline: tanks, trucks, armored cars, aircraft engineers, recon units, supply columns. An armored division required 73,177 gallons of fuel to advance 100 miles. Patton had multiple armored divisions, plus several infantry divisions, all devouring fuel at rates that made logistics officers physically sick. The combined First and Third Armies were burning roughly 800,000 gallons every single day. The fuel itself existed, mountains of it. It was stacked along the Normandy coastline in 55-gallon drums and 5-gallon jerry cans, waiting to move inland. But those supplies were still 200 miles from the front, and the only vehicles capable of hauling them forward were the very same trucks expected to carry ammunition, food, medical kits, spare parts, tires, and every other necessity required to keep Patton's massive force alive. And gasoline wasn't the only crisis. Ammunition consumption had become staggering. Artillery crews fired thousands of shells a day. Infantry divisions burned through hundreds of thousands of rifle rounds. Tank battalions demanded both fuel and ammunition in quantities unimaginable only a generation earlier. Food for 250,000 men, medical gear, replacement parts, repair tools. Everything had to be transported from the beaches to the advancing operational zones where Patton's scattered units pushed eastward, and each mile deeper into France stretched those supply lines thinner and thinner. Supply lines were stretched impossibly thin. Every mile eastward meant hours or days added to the trucks' journeys. The soldiers on the front had no idea how fragile the system had become. They only saw the Third Army push relentlessly forward. Tanks rolling, guns firing, infantry advancing, as if victory was inevitable. But behind the scenes, a silent crisis brewed. Every depot emptied faster than it could be replenished. Every truck running across torn-up French roads carried precious cargo: fuel, ammunition, food, medical supplies. One misstep, one breakdown, one delay, and the entire advance could stall. And yet, Patton's vision was absolute. Keep moving. Never pause. Momentum itself was the weapon. Every hesitation gave the Germans a chance to breathe, a chance to regroup, a chance to fight back. Rukard, 19 and new to war, had no way of knowing the scale of the challenge. He only knew the road, the hum of his truck's engine, and the mountains of supplies waiting to be delivered. Each trip across the shattered countryside was a gamble. Enemy snipers, destroyed bridges, derailed rail cars. Every obstacle meant precious time lost. Yet the army depended on him. Every drum of gasoline, every crate of ammunition, every bundle of rations he delivered kept tanks moving, kept guns firing, kept soldiers alive. In many ways, truck drivers like Rukard were the hidden lifeblood of Patton's unstoppable force. Without them, the Third Army's legendary speed would have been nothing more than an illusion. The logistical nightmare extended beyond fuel and food. Repair parts for vehicles were in constant demand. Tires wore down on rough roads. Engines needed maintenance. Medical supplies had to reach the wounded. Every day, the Army's supply network was tested to its absolute limits. And yet, despite every warning from his officers, Patton pressed on. The faster his divisions moved, the more chaotic the supply situation became. Every mile forward made the next mile a struggle. Every advancing column strained the fragile veins of the American war machine, threatening to snap under its own weight. By late August, the Third Army was living on the edge of supply and desperation. Each truck journeyed hundreds of miles from the beaches to the front lines. Each engine rev and tire turn carried the weight of 250,000 men. Every delay could stall the advance. Every mishap could give the Germans precious time to regroup. And yet, this was the very essence of Patton's audacious strategy. Force movement through sheer willpower, through relentless pressure, through a refusal to allow the enemy even a moment's respite. It was a dangerous gamble, a high-stakes dance with logistics and fate, where every decision, every mile, every gallon of fuel mattered. For Private James Rukard, the war was measured in miles traveled, drums of gasoline delivered, and supplies hauled from beach to battlefield. He may have been 19, inexperienced, and unaware of the broader strategy. But his role was vital. Every truckload he drove, every depot he supplied, every mile he pushed into occupied France, helped turn the unstoppable vision of Patton's Third Army into reality. And as the sun rose and fell over the northeastern French countryside, the Third Army, engines humming and tracks grinding, continued its legendary march. Fuel, food, ammunition, and human determination collided in a mechanical symphony of war. Patton's gamble had stretched supply lines to the breaking point, but the army moved forward, and the path to the Third Reich remained open, waiting for those brave enough to drive and fight through the chaos.